Okay, boys, it looks like we are live. Let me change that real quick. Don't know why that popped up right away. And let's see if we have to do anything else. I'm trying to think what we need to do first, actually, is pull up what we are going to be doing today, which is our 2021, our first redraft mock draft of the entire season. Now, y'all know on our Dynasty channel, we do this all the time, but that's because Dynasty Fantasy Football, you play year round. Where now, I think this is where we start to take redraft a little more serious. We are after the NFL draft. We have some valid data points coming in. So yeah, let's get our first mock draft going. How we are going to be doing this is just like we do on our Dynasty channel, where I go through and give the opportunity for everybody supporting the show on Patreon. They can come out and they can join the mock draft right away. They can get their guaranteed spot. And then if you're not supporting the show on Patreon, just by being subscribed to the channel, just by having your notification bell hit, you're still going to get a chance to join this mock draft by coming out extremely early. So first, let me get the link to Patreon for anybody wanting to shoot me a DM over there to join the mock draft. And then if we don't get that mock draft filled through Patreon within the first 3 or 4 minutes after everybody there supporting the show has had a shot to join in, then I'll send that link out in the general chat. Okay, so now let's pull up our Patreon link so y'all don't have to go all the way over to Patreon to shoot me that DM. Okay, so sent that out. I'm going to pin that in the top. And let me run over to Patreon, look at our DMs. That way we can start getting this invite out. Okay, and I just realized I forgot to get some water before this live stream, so this is going to be a little bit tough. But anyway, this is just going to be a 2021 fantasy football mock draft. This is going to be redraft. This is not going to be super flex. This is not going to be tight end premium. This is going to be very standard. One quarterback PPR league after the NFL draft. Rookies are going to be included, which is something that we can get excited about. But nonetheless, let me check the general chat real quick. I see we have had a ton of people coming out right away. A ton of people have that notification bell hit. And thank you all who have decided to drop likes earlier. Okay, so Victor, I see you, my man. Thank you for coming out. Abraham, I've been great. Josiah, let's go. Brother John. Wes is saying, how is ESPN Fantasy Open right now? Okay, no, we're not doing this on ESPN. We're doing this on Sleeper. There you can host redraft leagues as well. Okay, so now let's see. Legacy says, I love drafting here. Okay, Jack says, so just go get it now. Okay, don't know what that means. Freddie says, can we play for free? Yeah, like I said, guys, what we are going to be doing is we're going to make sure that everybody supporting the show on Patreon has priority access to join this mock draft right away. And if we don't fill it through that, then we'll go through and we'll send it out in the general chat for everybody subscribed to the channel, having their notifications on. That way they can get a shot in here. But I just have to make sure that the people that are supporting the show can come in and they can join right away. Okay, so Victor, got it to you, my man. Mike, sending you out. Sending it to you. Jan got you. Connor got you. All those DMs were sent through Patreon. Okay, so I just got a notification that one of our stocks is not doing well. Jack saying, go get your water. No, I think that we are just going to stick it with this. A mob says, a new template looks great. Yeah, man, this is actually what we streamed on pretty much the entire football season. Now, I know that we have not set this up for the Dynasty channel, but we are going to. Okay, it looks like we got a donation. Thank you so much to Rom for coming out. I don't know how we missed that in the live chat, but nonetheless, thank you for coming out, man. I'm super excited to see you. Alex says, yo, don't forget to send me an invite to one of your Dynasty leagues. Man, Alex, please shoot me a DM. My dude, we have been doing Dynasty leagues all off season now. I have that Dynasty Fantasy Football channel going. Please go over there, get active over there. I thought that you no longer wanted to be in a Dynasty league, but I'm very happy to see you back out. It's been a very long time. Okay, so Freddie says, can you put the link for Sleeper? Yeah, like I said, man, I'm going to give the people supporting the channel on Patreon just priority access. And then in about 2 or 3 minutes, I'll send out that link in Sleeper in the general chat for y'all to take the rest of the spots. George saying, damn, same. My stocks have been tanking. I know. Yeah. My phone is currently blowing up with them all taking a complete dive. It's a bad time to be really with any technology stocks over the past about 3 weeks, but I've been trying to do better, not looking at that. Okay. Jan says, just got home. Okay. Perfect, man. I'm glad that we are going to have you in this. Okay. So yeah, it looks like I think we got it out to everybody who shot us that DM on Patreon, everybody supporting the channel. So we can go through, and I'm going to send this link out. So Rom says, Mason, where's this mock draft, man? I just sent it in the general chat. Now let me pull up the draft board. So we are going to be drafting, and I will be able to share my screen as we go through this draft with you guys. Let me also pull over the YouTube chat real quick, just so I can make sure that I can read y'all's live chats at the same time we draft. Okay, just, oh my gosh, that is so annoying. I have no idea why Streamlabs has been just completely messing us up. Okay, but anyway, it looks like we are full. Bun, yes, I do remember you, another person that used to come out to all the live streams during the season. It's nice to have the gang all back together. But anyway, let me switch this over real quick. Let's pull up this screen and let's get drafting. Okay, so it looks like Victor claimed that 101 spot. And let's begin this draft. Like I said, guys, this is going to be a 1 quarterback redraft league, a very standard format. So everybody can really follow along. Everybody can look at this as something that they would also be using for their own leagues. Okay, Legacy says, I'm an American Sniper, by the way. Man, you absolutely killed that auction draft that we did earlier today on the Dynasty channel. I did so bad in that auction draft. Okay, we have Imp out here as well. We have C Money, a lot of people from the Dynasty channel out here with JN. So it's always nice to see that, of course. Okay, so now looks like running backs are going early. This is something that, of course, you're going to be expecting regardless of whatever fantasy draft you are participating in, just because the supply and demand. There are only so many 3-down workhorse running backs, where we know at the wide receiver position, that position is extremely deep, and you can find viable options all the way down there in like the 6th, 7th round. So, of course, we are going to be going with the running back with our first pick, and I'm going to be extremely excited here to draft Alvin Kamara. And obviously, it is a little concerning with Drew Brees leaving New Orleans and what that means for Alvin Kamara's target share. But nonetheless, I think if you can get him in the middle of the first round, that is something that you have to do. And honestly, you can't even think twice about it. I personally would probably have Alvin Kamara ahead of a few of those running backs that went ahead of him, but to each their own. They're all pretty much in the same tier. But regardless, I love the value we're getting there with Kamara at 6th. Okay, so Ian says 2 live streams in one day. Yes, sir. We are getting out here with our 2nd stream. And it's brutal. I will tell you that. My eyes are about to die from staring at this computer screen. But yeah, I am a little bit surprised to see Jonathan Taylor at number 4 ahead of Alvin Kamara. I will say that. Now, y'all know I love Jonathan Taylor, and especially in those dynasty formats, I think you can view Jonathan Taylor as an elite level running back. But specifically for 2021 fantasy, I think that it's honestly a safe call to have some of those other guys ahead of him, like an Alvin Kamara. But to each their own. Like I said, let's see how this looks once we get 5-6 rounds in. Okay. Yeah, Glenn asking, what's my favorite NFL team? To be completely honest, man, I don't have a favorite NFL team. Way back whenever you had Andre Johnson and Matt Schaub for the Houston Texans, I really liked the Texans. That was mainly because back then I always drafted Andre Johnson and Matt Schaub to get that stack on my fantasy team when I was a lot younger than I am now. So back then, I liked the Texans. Now, I literally couldn't care less for a team. If I was going to root for a team, I probably would root for whatever team Sammy Watkins was on, to be completely honest, or Amari Cooper, or Odell Beckham Jr., or Brandon Cooks, or Allen Robinson, some of my favorite wide receivers. But like I said, guys, I am just a fan of players. I really don't care about teams too much ever since I got full-on dynasty. I mean, full-on the scouting just addiction. I think that we kind of fell in love with players rather than teams. Okay, so now I will say, let me ask y'all this. Okay, for everybody participating on Patreon, y'all know that we are always running Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. But over there on Patreon, once we get closer to the season, we are definitely going to get some regular fantasy football leagues, some regular 2021 fantasy redraft leagues going. Now, let me know when y'all want us to start running those over on Patreon. Let me know if y'all want us to wait until we get a little closer to the season, or if that's something that y'all would possibly want to do a little bit earlier on. Now, like I said, guys, those redraft leagues are going to be a little bit more restrictive, where, of course, you're not playing for the long haul. It's going to be a little bit harder to trade, but nonetheless, it could still be fun to get in those drafts. It could still be fun to get in and talk smack. And of course, I would live stream them as I always do. Okay, so now we have the wide receivers and Travis Kelce going off the board. I really like the value of Travis Kelce at the 203 after you have some of those elite running backs going off, even if Travis Kelce is not as an elite of an asset as he is in a tight end premium league. Okay, so now let's see. Mark says redraft is so weird after all the dynasty. Yeah, man, I agree with you. I think it's a decent exercise that we can have, though, is just going through and going, hey, what are we expecting with these players for 2021? Because a lot of these guys, if you're valuing them extremely highly for dynasty and you don't think that they're going to be producing that much in 2021, at that point, maybe you have to kind of reflect and go, am I overvaluing this player in dynasty? Because we know if we don't get that instant production, their value is most likely going to crater. Okay, so now if we are scrolling through, I mean, you have two elite tight ends still available in George Kittle and Darren Waller, but with how many tight ends are going to be available in the later rounds that we have interest in, I kind of want to go running back here. It's just hard to find a guy that we can look at with excitement. Now, Joe Mixon is someone that we would have wanted to go with, but now at this point, we're looking at pretty much DeAndre Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, Antonio Gibson, Najee Harris. And if this was a dynasty league, I'd be all over this. If this was a dynasty league, I'd be taking DeAndre Swift and I'd be running. But for a 2021 redraft league, we have to go, okay, what is the actual expected points output that we can expect from a player like that? And in that instance, I think that this is probably going to be a little bit closer. Now, just because I'm afraid of what running backs are going to be available on the way back, I think we are going to be taking DeAndre Swift here. I like to see what Detroit did in the NFL draft. I like that they go out there, get the best offensive lineman in the draft. Now, this is a pick that I could have gone a multitude of ways. So please let me know in the comment section if you're watching this as a video, or let me know in the live chat right now if you think that DeAndre Swift pick was bad. But the thing is, I am just expecting us to be able to look at some great wide receivers once we get to the third round. And if we pull up the running backs that are going to be available in the third round, I mean, the options are going to be absolutely disgusting. Okay. So Arian says, Ayo, would you be doing like your own personal mock draft, like where you think everybody should go? Maybe I can make a video like that once we get closer to the season. I don't think I want to do that right now, though. In coming out and says, my evaluation of players is so messed up after being in a 20-team PPR keeper return league for over 10 years. Yeah, man, like I said, I am almost all dynasty. Dynasty fantasy football is my preferred way to play. So my own evaluations are a little bit messed up trying to go from dynasty over to redraft. Maybe you see this by me taking DeAndre Swift in the middle of the second round. Maybe that's a little bit of a too early of a pick, to be honest. But nonetheless, I love DeAndre Swift. I love the addition to the offensive line, and I think Swift can be not a three-down running back like a workhorse like Ezekiel Elliott, but he can be more so the Aaron Jones type where he's getting all the important touches. He's getting the touches at the goal line. He's getting the targets out of the backfield, and we know how valuable that is in a PPR format. But I want to point out JN taking Josh Jacobs at the 208. Man, I hate that Josh Jacobs selection there. I think you have to go Antonio Gibson. I think you have to go Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, with Josh Jacobs, I mean, he gets a downgraded offensive line this offseason. Throw in the fact that now you have the Las Vegas Raiders indicating that they really never plan on using him as that three-down running back by bringing in Kenyon Drake with a pretty large contract. So I would have preferred to see you go really with any of those players that went directly after. I would have preferred to see Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, DeAndre Hopkins all over Josh Jacobs. But please let me know what y'all are thinking in the general chat. Maybe I am just completely off. But in the general chat, JN says, I know Mason is going to hate my pick. Man, you know me too well. But Seth saying Swift has a very huge ceiling this year. Yeah, man. If Matthew Stafford was there, I think we could be a little bit more excited about the overall potential of the offense. With Jared Goff, it definitely is not as exciting as we were. Shanko says 3 years in a row losing in the finals. Man, honestly, that is the absolute worst. I talk about this all the time in fantasy football, that the majority of the strategy in fantasy football and how you really know if you are a winning player is if you're playing in a ton of leagues and you get in the playoffs in the majority of them. We know that the standard format is going to be a 12-team league where 6 teams make the playoffs. So if you're playing in just say 15 leagues like we were last year, and then you have almost every single one getting to the playoffs, then you can sit here and you can go, Okay, it looks like we are a very profitable player. It looks like we know exactly what we are doing. Now, once you get to the playoffs, actually winning those games is going to be so volatile and random year to year. It's kind of like March Madness where it's single elimination. You really don't know what's going to happen. So I think the majority of the actual strategy in fantasy leading to success is just setting yourself up nicely to get to the playoffs, preferably get a bye, and then that way you don't have to quote unquote get lucky and win 3 weeks in a row to take down the title. So my man, if you're making it to the finals in back-to-back years, you are completely fine. Do not worry about that. But Justin Jefferson at the 303, I will say I really do not like that Justin Jefferson selection. I know that Jefferson was an elite producer last year. I understand he was a rookie. He was one of the best rookies of all time. But if we are going through right now, I mean, you do have some other veteran wide receivers that we really, really like, especially a guy like DK Metcalf when we know that you are going to have Russell Wilson staying in town. You still have those elite tight ends. And I just think that you're going to see a very large wide receiver tier here. So possibly, I think the better value on the board would have been a guy like George Kittle or Darren Waller. And I'm willing to say that now that we are only 2 picks away from getting one of those elite tight ends. Now, like I said, I wasn't going to be willing to take one of them at the 207 as we needed to get a 3-down running back, because once we got to this 3rd round, you really weren't going to be able to see any of those elite level running backs still available. You could make the argument in a redraft league that David Montgomery is interesting. You could make the argument that, no, I don't even think you could say that you want Travis Etienne in this range. I think it's either David Montgomery, you go wide receiver, or you go tight end. And to be completely honest, I was initially thinking of going tight end at first. I was initially thinking of getting my guy, George Kittle. But looking at the tier breaks, right? So it looks like if we go with David Montgomery, we are just going to be so far ahead of the field at the running back position that we may not have to reach on another running back for the next, just say, 10 rounds. And y'all know when you do enough of these drafts, I am always finding a wide receiver in the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th round. I always like a wide receiver in one of those ranges where the running backs get absolutely disgusting. So although David Montgomery is a running back that I really don't like, even though I think the workload's not going to be close to the same with Tariq Cohen coming in, just because the tier drop-off is about to be so hard for a 2021 redraft league, I think we go with David Montgomery at the 306, even if it's seen as a little bit of a reach. I am confident in our ability to be able to soak up a wide receiver value in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7 and identify some tight ends with upside very late. So yeah, David Montgomery looks like a reach, but it's going to put some of those teams that decided not to go with back-to-back running backs at the end of the first in a very difficult decision where they're going to be faced with the question of going, hey, do I draft a Travis Etienne here, even if we don't understand exactly what the workload is going to look like at the beginning of the year? And we know that in Dynasty, I'm completely fine investing into Travis Etienne, because at that point we could go, okay, we know that the team is significantly invested into the player. We know that he checks every single box. We know that the talent is there. So at that point, you can invest into the player. But if you're talking 2021 redraft, you have to be investing into volume. You have to be investing into more so situation. So I think because of that, we are going to take the guaranteed volume and situation with David Montgomery as one of the last 3-down running backs on the board. Okay, so let's see. Butthead is asking, why did Swift fall to the 207? Essentially, this is a 2021 redraft league. This is not a dynasty format. That is why Swift fell to the 207. Honestly, I don't even think that it's a great value or anything given the format. Of course, we liked him enough to take him there, but I'm not going to sit here and bash anybody for taking Joe Mixon over DeAndre Swift. I think possibly we would have done the same thing if we were represented with opportunity. We weren't, so we don't know that answer for sure. But anyway, Robert says, I like Akers a lot. Can't hate on him going in the first in this mock. Yeah, man, here with Cam Akers, I mean, he looks like he can handle the workload of an Ezekiel Elliott. He looks like he has that body. He has that frame. He has the elite athletic profile. I mean, he was a 5-star guy going into FSU, and the offensive line was just absolutely atrocious, which led him to being a round 2 NFL draft pick in 2020. And if y'all remember, if you were watching to the channel so long ago, remember when Darrell Henderson was on his hot streak and I kept on coming out and said, guys, Cam Akers is the best running back in LA. please go sell Darrell Henderson. Go pick up Cam Akers off the waiver wire. Do this ASAP. This is when Cam Akers was quote unquote healthy, but he wasn't playing. And I was trying to tell y'all that Cam Akers had the rib injury still lingering, and they just brought him back a little bit too early. And Sean McVay didn't want to put him in harm's way. And I was getting roasted. I mean, y'all were coming into the chat, y'all were coming in to the live streams just telling me I didn't know what I was talking about, telling me that I was just a straight up bum. And I think at this point you can look at Cam Akers being a late first and go, hey, maybe we owe Mason an apology. Maybe he was on to something there. But Daniel Quinn, what are you doing, my man? You're online and you're going to time out. CeeDee Lamb, not a bad pick. I do not think that we actually need to go in and manually change that, so we're going to leave it. But if that continues to auto, we are going to be monitoring that. That way we can make sure that if it does anything absolutely crazy, just like saying taking James Robinson in the 4th or something, we can go through and we can make that change. But nonetheless, he comes back. Okay. So Harrison says, I messed up the Diggs pick, but I loved getting Kittle in the 3rd. Yeah, I like the Kittle in the 3rd as well. Like I said, it was very close for me between George Kittle and David Montgomery there at the 306. But essentially, I just know myself. And I know once we get to rounds 8, 9, 10, 11, I mean, there are always going to be a running back. There's always going to be a tight end there that I'm sorry, not a running back, a wide receiver that I'm just trying to grab. And usually what happens is that I can't help myself. I grab a wide receiver in the 3rd. And then by the time I get to the 9th, I'm like, you know what? I like 5 wide receivers on the board. I don't like a single running back, but I really need to draft a running back here just because we didn't set up our roster construction as nice as we would like it. So here, just simply because I know how great we are at finding wide receiver value in the later rounds, I figured might as well just go with a running back here. That way we didn't have to bother looking at the running back position. Okay, JN says Robinson and ETN is last year's Henderson, Brown, and Akers. I can see the comparison. I will say I think that Travis Etienne is going to make a much larger impact his rookie season than Cam Akers, though. I love the comparison with talent between Travis Etienne and Cam Akers, but I think Etienne comes in given the first-round draft capital, and I think that they give him the majority of the usage right away. Shanko coming in says, Curtis Samuel season outlook. Man, Curtis Samuel, if we are talking about an NFL wide receiver, what he brings to the actual Washington football team, I think you can get very excited. I think with Curtis Samuel, just how he is going to unlock the overall offense for Washington, it's great. Now, if we were talking about an actual fantasy football league, there you can see the limitations on his overall ceiling just because Curtis Samuel is one of those wide receivers that wins with efficiency. He doesn't necessarily win with volume. We know those aren't the best wide receivers to be chasing, but still he's exciting. It's going to depend on the price point that he actually ends up with his ADP, but I can definitely get to him whenever we see him go off the board, and I can definitely let you know if I think that's a fair price or not. But now let me point out something in why I decided to go with David Montgomery at the 306. Y'all saw that Ronald Jones pick there at the 402. I mean, given the fact they bring Fournette back, given the fact that they go and sign Giovanni Bernard, I mean, I think that's a pick that literally has no upside. I mean, when you're faced with the decision where you're kind of forced to possibly draft a Ronald Jones over Michael Thomas and Allen Robinson, I think you just have to kind of question what you did earlier in the draft. I mean, the best way we can go about this is let's see what Ryan would have done if he decided to instead pass on Tyreek Hill in the 1st, draft either Austin Eckler or J.K. Dobbins, and then how his team would have looked. Okay, so say he passed on Tyreek Hill and he drafted the next best running back in Austin Eckler. So if his first 3 rounds went Eckler, Aaron Jones, and Travis Etienne, he could have then followed it up with Michael Thomas with his 4th round pick. And let me ask y'all this. Would you rather have Tyreek Hill and Ronald Jones, or would you rather have Michael Thomas and Austin Eckler? Obviously, you would rather have Austin Eckler and Michael Thomas. So I think it's an easy decision point there to kind of look back. And yes, hindsight is 20/20, but try to learn that lesson to make sure you don't make that same mistake in the next draft. Seth saying Ronald Jones is only 23. Man, you can come in here and you can argue how talented Ronald Jones is. Trust me, I bought Ronald Jones very cheap 2 off seasons ago in Dynasty. I understand the talent. I understand pretty much everything about Ronald Jones, but we are talking 2021 redraft. We are talking about what the overall range of outcomes is with these players. And in the case of Ronald Jones, he simply does not have it in his potential to be a round. I just want to say he can't be a top 12 running back because there's always going to be a running back taking away usage on passing downs. So if there's always going to be a running back taking away usage on passing downs, I don't see it with Ronald Jones. But anyway, we are up on the clock here, and I kind of want to surprise some people. If we had a clear stack, I think we would have gone with an elite level quarterback. But because we don't, I think we have to go wide receiver. Obviously not going to go with these top 3 options. We would in Dynasty, but this is redraft. We're going to be looking mainly at one of Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, or Amari Cooper, to be completely honest. And given the fact that you do not have the Los Angeles Chargers bringing in any other pass catching options outside of Josh Palmer in the NFL draft, and you have the Julio concerns, you also have Kyle Pitts coming in to possibly take some targets. I think we are going to get Keenan Allen here as our wide receiver 1. So Keenan Allen going off the board as, I believe, so that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The wide receiver 16, so a mid wide receiver 2. I'm completely fine getting our first wide receiver on this team as a mid wide receiver 2. I think that Keenan Allen has the potential to be a top 5 guy, so I'm completely fine with that. Okay, so Ian says Allen and Jones are such good values. I don't know about Julio Jones. Let me know what y'all think, guys. Trust me, I love Julio, but with Kyle Pitts coming in, I think it's safe to say that we have to be a little bit concerned what the targets are going to look like. Maybe it just never reaches what we once had with Julio. But regardless, Keenan Allen there at the 407, I am going to love. Now, Amari Cooper at the 408, I love that pick by JN as well. And here, JN, let me know if you are kind of regretting that Josh Jacobs or DK Metcalf pick in the 2nd or 3rd round. I can feel free to roast you. I can feel free to try to ask for your honest opinion and how this draft has gone so far. But nonetheless, Garlic Johnson taking the 2nd top quarterback off the board in Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is actually a massive winner from the NFL draft. They bring in not only 1st round drafted wide receiver Rashad Bateman, they bring in Tylan Wallace as well. Tylan Wallace is someone that fell due to medical concerns, but possibly that is just a little bit overblown. Possibly if the Ravens hit on that pick, you could be looking at Lamar Jackson having one of the biggest upgrades of the offseason in his wide receiver room. And they also give Sammy Watkins $8 million. Now, Sammy Watkins, yes, is not someone we can get too excited about for fantasy, but you look at what he can do for the overall efficiency of the offense and what kind of defensive attention he requires. I think that is something to get excited about in the case of Lamar Jackson. Okay, so guys, please, if you have not, go down there, drop a like on this live stream. How about this? There are 150 people in this live stream right now. I am sure by the time we get to the end of the draft, would have already had about 800 people come through. So if we hit 125 likes on this live stream, I will do another one of these live streams this weekend for y'all, trying to get some more people in here, some more people that are subscribed to the channel, have that notification bell hit, and can come out right away. Okay, but another elite quarterback option coming off the board in Kyler Murray. And now, y'all know that I always say that in one quarterback leagues, quarterback doesn't matter. Always avoid the position. But if you have these elite level options like a Lamar Jackson and a Kyler Murray going in the 4th round, I'm completely fine with that investment. If you want to go the QB route at that range, I'm fine with it. You do you. I can't necessarily say I would do the same thing. Now, if you have the potential for a stack, maybe you had DeAndre Hopkins and then you can stack him with Kyler Murray, then that is something we could get excited about. Maybe if you had Stephon Diggs and you can stack him with Josh Allen, then yeah, in the 4th round, maybe I go that direction. Obviously, we didn't have that potential with the quarterbacks that we had attached to our players in the 4th, being Justin Fields. No way in hell I'm drafting him in this range. Jared Goff, I'm not drafting him at all. And Jameis Winston, maybe we look at him extremely late. But outside of that, we really had no clear stack potential. Okay, so Diet Dr. Kelp says, Paris Campbell outlook. Man, Paris Campbell actually was another one of these big-time winners from the NFL draft. I was a little bit worried that you were going to see Indianapolis decide to go invest into the wide receiver position, yet they decide to stay away. Yeah, they do give T.Y. Hilton $8 million this offseason. Nonetheless, it looks like the top wide receiver options on this team are going to be Michael Pittman and Paris Campbell. So it's really going to be tied to what we see with Carson Wentz. If Carson Wentz can come anything close to what he was during his prime, then I think that Paris Campbell does have top 24 wide receiver upside. I think that you could see a Paris Campbell breakout. Yet if Carson Wentz instead just reverts back to what he was in 2020, at that point, I think you have to be very worried and you have to be looking at a player with limited upside. But it's going to kind of depend on what we are expecting from Carson Wentz this upcoming season. Yeah, Shenko says he won't touch the Vegas backfield with a 10-foot pole bend. I agree with that. I just think that Josh Jacobs in the 2nd round was a little bit too high. JN says, the Metcalf pick, I considered Ridley, but Jones scared me away. So if you're talking about here, Ridley, I think picking Metcalf over Ridley is complete. I think that's completely fine. I was more so asking about what you were doing drafting a wide receiver versus David Montgomery, or if you wanted to do this different thing with Josh Jacobs. And I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm just asking for your opinion now that you see what's available in the 4th, 5th round. I'm just trying to get a feel for what you are thinking yourself. But anyway, coming up in the 5th round, now, if we are looking at best available at the quarterback position, you could have Josh Allen, you could have Russell Wilson. I don't necessarily know in a redraft league, specifically for 2021, if I want to be considering Dak Prescott or Joe Burrow coming back from their injuries in this range. And obviously, we're not going to be considering Deshaun Watson in a redraft league in this range either. So I think this leads us going back to possibly the wide receiver position. I love that selection of Myles Gaskin there at the 505. I think Gaskin is a player that if you look at what he did last year in a much worse situation, I think he does have top 15 overall running back upside this upcoming season. But now we are up on the clock at the 506. And if we were looking at the wide receiver position, there aren't too many exciting options. Now we are going to be scrolling down here just a little bit to make sure Sleeper isn't messing us up with their ADP like they always do. So if this was a dynasty league, of course, I would be jumping out of my skin to draft Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins. But given that this is a redraft league, I think that we go with a little bit of an older wide receiver, someone that I don't necessarily love, but I think we're fine with the value in this range. And I know y'all are going to kill me for this. Trust me, I don't like this guy. I consistently called him a sell last offseason, and he consistently came out and proved me wrong. And it just made me look like a complete idiot. But we are going to be drafting Adam Thielen in the 5th round to be our wide receiver 2. Now with this start, I do not mind it at all, to be completely honest. So Kamara, Swift, Montgomery, getting our 3 running backs in, and then trying to find some productive wide receivers. A guy like Kenny Golladay, I just couldn't get behind because A, you're looking at a wide receiver changing teams. We understand that historically, that's going to be a very hard bet to make. B, we know that compared to the 2 guys, I mean, Kenny Golladay has the much worse quarterback in Daniel Jones compared to Kirk Cousins at this point. And also, you've had the consistency of Adam Thielen, where we know that Kenny Golladay has dealt with the injuries. So I think we kind of had to go with Adam Thielen there, but I don't necessarily love it. Okay, so now let's go through. Shenko says, I'm liking C Money's draft as well. Okay, Cook, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, love those 2 players to start. Now, Jefferson in the 3rd. Like I said, I don't know if we would have gone with Jefferson ourselves. I think that, honestly, I would have preferred to see you go with either Carson, go with an elite tight end, or really, that's it. I mean, if you're going a wide receiver there, I can't fault you too much for going Jefferson. It's just because it's all one tier. Who's to say what wide receivers I can't even pronounce that word. Who's to say what wide receiver is for sure going to be better? But nonetheless, Julio Jones in the 4th, fantastic value. And in the 5th with Kareem Hunt. That's where it gets interesting, because would you rather have Justin Jefferson and Kareem Hunt, or would you rather have Chris Carson and Adam Thielen? I think maybe that's kind of a wash. So yeah, I like that draft. I think maybe there's nothing that you could really stray away from. Logan is saying NFC North is your main lineup. Yeah, so we got the Lions, we got the Bears, and we got Adam Thielen coming in. Okay, so now let me see if we have anything else in the general chat that we can be checking out. I see that we did pass 60 likes. Thank you all so much, guys, who have decided to drop a like on the stream. Okay, so now JN says Gibson got me to the playoffs and got turf toe. Yeah, I think that you can't blame Gibson on that. Y'all know that Antonio Gibson was a running back that I loved last offseason, and I was literally partying nonstop because after we hyped him up weeks on weeks on weeks, he finally has his breakout. I am just thinking that everybody, a part of the flock, is going to be making so much money last offseason. He gets turf toe, kind of takes it away from us, but sometimes you get unlucky in fantasy. Okay, Mike says, I would maybe even go Gaskin over David Montgomery. Can't believe he's still on the board. Yeah, no, Myles Gaskin was a fantastic value in the 5th round. We cannot deny that. Another great value is going to be Chase Edmonds here. Chase Edmonds, yes, it looks a little bit worrisome with James Conner coming in, but if you look at the James Conner contract, I mean, James Conner was brought in close to the league minimum. So I think based on that, we go, hey, this team has a ton of confidence in Chase Edmonds. They were essentially going, hey, Kenyon Drake, you can leave. We're not paying any other running back outside of Chase Edmonds. Yes, we'll bring in some depth if we can just do it at no cost whatsoever. But given the fact that James Conner really is not getting paid anything. I think that you look at Chase Edmonds, you can go, hey, he's going to be starting running back all year. So Daniel Quinn, despite me not necessarily agreeing with passing on a running back in the first, I think that based on the fact that he was able to pull Chase Edmonds in the late fifth, I think that, I don't want to say he saved himself, but he now has a team that has a ton of upside, maybe the most upside in the entire draft. Okay, JN says, can't believe I traded Travis Fulgham for Antonio Gibson straight up. Oh my God, guys. We were talking earlier about y'all making fun of me for telling y'all to sell Darrell Henderson. Can we bring back the haters who, whenever I was calling Travis Fulgham a bum, whenever I was saying Travis Fulgham was something you wanted nothing to do with and to sell right away, do y'all remember how much hate I was getting? I mean, people were threatening to hunt me down, find my firstborn child whenever they are born, and just straight up take them from me. I mean, it sounded like we had just Travis Fulgham's entire family in the live chat whenever I was trying to talk about selling Travis Fulgham. That's a name I have not heard in a very long time. And you won't hear that name in a very long time because Travis Fulgham is a bum. Okay, so now I think maybe we are going to be going a little bit off the board when we are up here yet again. So if we are going to be looking at QB, what we would have wanted is we would have wanted to see Justin Herbert fall to us. That way we could have gotten the Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert stack. Yet instead, you have American Sniper coming out here taking Justin Herbert. That way you can get the Austin Eckler Justin Herbert stack. So because that is no longer available to us, I think what we have to do is we have to go, okay, not really interested in too many quarterbacks in this range. Ian said, LOL, Travis Fulgham had a cult following last season. And I know, I mean, the Travis Fulgham stands were just the absolute worst, to be completely honest. In says, any idea of a comparable running back value to Josh Allen for my 20-team PPR? Might try to trade him. Hate to break up my dig stack, though. Man, if you're talking about a 20-team league, it's going to be so hard to find that quarterback production, especially that top-end quarterback production. I think maybe there, if you have a dig stack, I just want to be holding Josh Allen. Do you have another quarterback on the team that you could possibly be looking to sell? That way you wouldn't have to break up the stack. Okay, so here I'm going to bring up a name just because I know he won't make it back to us if we pass on him. And I think this is what we do. Let me just double check to make sure I'm not missing out on any other running backs. Yeah, the only real running back that I would be interested in at this point is going to be Mike Davis. And of course, there are some wide receivers that we like still on the board. And I know it looks like we are reaching here. But nonetheless, I mean, Mike Davis, if he comes anything close to the opportunity he saw last season, I mean, he thrived with that opportunity. He was a running back one. So here, taking him in the 6th round, I think that is just a pick that allows us to not have to look at the running back position for the rest of the draft. I mean, we have 4 guys we're going into with the season. Now, from here, we go wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, and that's it. And if we need to go through and address the running back position for a bye week or whatever, I mean, we can do that through keepers. I'm sorry, we can do that through waivers. Okay, Diet Dr. Kelp says, I traded Fulgham and Darrell Henderson for Keenan Allen. Thank you. Man, that is absolutely awesome. I think what we should do for this next year is I think that I should probably replace these jerseys with some of the players that we just absolutely crushed last season. Guys like Travis Fulgham, guys like Darrell Henderson, where, I mean, we just got so much hate. Whenever you come out, and it doesn't matter what your reasoning is, if you say to sell a player, people are going to be coming at your neck. Okay, Marco says, how do you feel about AJ Green being a top 10 wide receiver this year? Man, literally that is going to be impossible. AJ Green has no upside to be a top 10 wide receiver. Not only does he go to the Arizona Cardinals, where you already have a DeAndre Hopkins possibly commanding 160 targets a season, throw in the fact that this is a team that also decides to draft Rondale Moore in the 2nd round. So AJ Green, literally one of the most inefficient wide receivers in the entire NFL in 2020. I think there's no reason to expect him to get another year older and for him to have any shot at being a top 10 wide receiver. Yeah. Ian coming out says AJ Green won't even be in the top 20. Man, I would bet any amount of money that AJ Green is not in the top 30 wide receivers. Hit me up on Discord, hit me up on Patreon, hit me up wherever you want to make that bet, and we can book it. Okay, Kip is asking, is this a 1 quarterback mock? Yes, sir. This is a 1 quarterback mock. This is a standard redraft league PPR, 1 QB, nothing special about this format. This is the most standard format that you could see. Of course, on our Dynasty channel, we cover pretty much every format that you can ever find. But no, on this one, I think that we're going to keep it very standard. We're going to keep it very basic. And now you finally have T. Higgins going off the board at the 6'10". And I want to point out the fact that you had Jamar Chase going over a round before this. Absolutely absurd with what we saw from the draft pick of Jamar Chase and Garlic Johnson. Man, I loved the start of your draft. I loved Jonathan Taylor, Antonio Gibson, Chris Carson, Lamar Jackson, and I even loved the Robert Woods pick. But to be going and chasing a rookie wide receiver in the middle of the 5th round, even one as good as Jamar Chase, I think that's a little bit reckless, where yes, you can say in a dynasty league, you would prefer the talent of Jamar Chase over T. Higgins. But if we're talking redraft this season, I think it's extremely reckless to be drafting Jamar Chase a round and a half ahead of T. Higgins. I think that, you're just kind of getting the rookie fever at that point. Okay, I see that we are closing in on having 200 people in the live stream. Thank you all so much for coming out. And like I said, guys, if we hit 125 likes in this stream, I will be doing another one of these mock drafts this weekend. That way we can get more people in here participating. JD says, who is going to be Stafford's favorite target? Man, Stafford is a quarterback that really is not going to be looking to consistently check the ball down. We know his average depth of target is always a little bit above league average. So because of that, I think instead of Cooper Kupp getting flooded with targets, I think that you can almost confidently say that that player is going to be Robert Woods. And that's why I really like the Robert Woods pick there at the 609. And I think if we would have decided to pass on Mike Davis, I think we possibly would have gone with a Robert Woods. But Jalen Hurts going off at the 703, and I actually love that pick of Jalen Hurts, and this is something I talk about over on Patreon all the time, especially for Dynasty Leagues, is where in a Superflex format, especially a Dynasty Superflex format, Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that you have to be a little bit scared about, and that we don't know if he's going to have a guaranteed job over the next 3 years, given the team investment and what it historically means by the Philadelphia Eagles. Yet in a 1 quarterback redraft league, all you are doing is hunting upside at the quarterback position. And there are very few quarterbacks that possess the same level of upside as a Jalen Hurts. I promise you, I was targeting Jalen Hurts in this draft. I thought that we were going to be able to get him a little bit later on. I thought that we were going to be able to get him in the middle of the 8th round. Of course, that doesn't happen. So now we look like a fool. But nonetheless, great pick there by for Jalen Hurts. Now, I really hope y'all don't make me do this. I really hope JN takes this guy instead so I don't have to take him, because y'all know that I really don't like him. But no, he goes Will Fuller. So now we are going to be forced going with the wide receiver that I don't like. Y'all know one of my worst calls all season last year was that Juju Smith-Schuster was a great value at ADP. Yet instead, you had a different wide receiver coming out and leading the Pittsburgh Steelers in targets. You had Deontay Johnson, who we are going to be taking at the 706 in the middle of the 7th round. Now in Dynasty, I don't love Deontay Johnson in really any format. But just here, I think given the value, I think at some point we finally have to press the button on Deontay Johnson. There's one other player that I was really going to be targeting, but I'm not going to say his name right now. If he falls to us in the 8th round, I will let you know who he is, but he's another guy that we could have considered over Deontay. But I think just given the fact that Deontay really had no shot at making it back to us, we kind of had to go with him. Now, James Robinson in the middle of the 7th. Let me know what y'all think of this pick. I'm not going to have any strong takes here. I am on the record for saying that I believe Travis Etienne comes in, and Travis Etienne is going to be a 3-down running back a lot sooner than most people think, given the team investment made by the Jacksonville Jaguars. But let me know what y'all are thinking of James Robinson at the 707. I really love Trey Sermon at the 708, and Noah Fant was our guy going off the board in the end of the 7th. If I did not take Deontay Johnson, Noah Fant would have been my player. But yeah, so congrats, man, for going out and getting Noah Fant. That's the guy I wanted, to be completely honest. Okay, Mike's saying Pittman is wide receiver 3. Man, if you look at the contract that you have by T.Y. Hilton, then yeah, you could say that in theory, but honestly, if you look at the efficiency levels by T.Y. Hilton over the past few years, I think that's going to be hard to say. Jake Wilkins coming out, my man, saying draft Kellen Mond at number 1 overall. Man, I was going to, but then I realized I was like, you know what? Kellen Mond, the education that he probably got at Texas A&M is going to be, it's not going to be the best. You know, that's what they always say with Texas A&M. They go, you can't really understand what someone's thinking when they decide to go to a school like that. You have to kind of question their decision making, especially Kellen Mond. I mean, he was a top prospect. He could have gotten into like a really good school like the University of Texas or so, but you always have to question the quarterback's decision making when he decides to go to Texas A&M. So because of that, I think it's going to be very hard to expect Kellen Mond to really do anything at the next level. Okay, but let's see where we are going to be going here. We're kind of put in a difficult spot now that we don't have any tight ends that we can be too excited about. I think at that point, after Noah Fant goes off the board, there is a significant drop-off. We probably should have gone with Noah Fant where we were considering him at the 706, to be completely honest, if we were looking at the different tiers across the positions. Logan said, how did the presentation go? It went well. It was like a mock presentation where we had to go through and we had to present it before we showed it to the research group. So it wasn't like the pressure was on or anything. It was just something that I kind of had to go to. Tomorrow is the real ones. The real one. Okay, so now let's see. MJ says, as a J-Rob truther last year, that's a bad pick. Okay, so I just am viewing James Robinson pretty much at this point as a running back that you're probably going to be expecting high-end running back 3 numbers from whenever Travis Etienne is active, because obviously James Robinson is still going to have a role in the offense. I just don't see him being a league winner unless you have Travis Etienne go down. And if you have Travis Etienne go down, James Robinson jumps up to a point where I think you naturally expect him to be a top 5 running back overall. So yeah, there I will say that it's kind of like a poor man's Kareem Hunt, where, you know, Kareem Hunt, you're not going to be getting that top 10 overall running back finish unless you see a Nick Chubb injury. But if that Nick Chubb injury does happen, you could see that elite level jump that simply you're not going to find from other running backs in that range. Maybe you look at James Robinson the same way. It's just really hard to say at this point. MJ says Fournette and Sermon before James Robinson this year. I'm actually fine with taking James Robinson ahead of Leonard Fournette. I just think that the upside for really any running back in Tampa is going to be so limited with so many guys in the room. I mean, Giovanni Bernard coming in is not nothing. Giovanni Bernard coming in is something that you need to pay attention to, given the fact that we understand that he is going to be running a significant amount of routes. You look at what he actually did in Cincinnati last year and pretty much for the past 4 years now, and you go, okay, this is a running back that has a floor receiving the football that not many other players have. Okay, so Melvin Gordon now going off at the 802. Melvin Gordon, see, I think that honestly, I would probably prefer Melvin Gordon over Leonard Fournette, because if you're talking about Fournette, what is the upside? I mean, he was a healthy scratch at some points last year. I just don't understand it with Fournette. I don't understand where the appeal comes from, but of course, let me know if I'm missing something. Let me know if I'm just completely overlooking Leonard Fournette and it's really not warranted. Okay, so Seth is asking, do I take Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, or Terrace Marshall? Man, there we do have our official rookie rankings updated over on Patreon. You can find them. Now, those are for dynasty formats. Let me know if you're asking for 2021 specifically, because I think when you're evaluating these players from a dynasty standpoint, it's going to be a little bit different than what you're going to be looking at in the case of someone that's just projecting for 2021 opportunity. Logan says, I dislike Ryan's team, and no offense, Ryan. Let me pull up Ryan's team real quick. Okay, Ryan is Tyreek Hill, Aaron Jones, Travis Etienne, Ronald Jones. Yeah, I think the pick that killed it was the Ronald Jones selection. I think you look at it and really there are 2 picks. Actually, there are 2 picks I don't like. I really don't like the Kyle Pitts selection either. I mean, to expect that much from a rookie tight end, historically, you are betting against pretty much everything that we have ever seen before. So if you would have changed, just say Ronald Jones and Kyle Pitts to instead Michael Thomas and Justin Herbert, I think that would have been a much better way to go about it. And I think you could look at that team and get excited. But yeah, just those 2 picks kind of killed the draft in my opinion. Obviously, we are wrong all the time, but I just can't get behind either value. Okay, so Anthony says, I'll take your second-born child if you don't take a QB or tight end this round. Man, I may not take a QB or a tight end this entire draft. I probably am going to be getting our wide receiver 4 here, to be completely honest. So if we are going through, the problem is you did see that drop off at the wide receiver position. Robbie Anderson would be a clear value at this point if you did not have Terrace Marshall getting added in. So y'all know how I was being asked earlier about Curtis Samuel. Maybe Curtis Samuel's a route that we decide to go here in the 8th round. So it's honestly going to come between two players with me. It's going to come down between Brandon Cooks and Curtis Samuel. So Brandon Cooks does look like he is going to be locked into the Houston Texans, and he did have some elite spike weeks last year, and it looks like the target share should be very high, given the fact that this is an offense that's not going to have really anybody else to throw to. So I think we take Brandon Cooks. We go, okay, if Deshaun Watson doesn't play this year, obviously Brandon Cooks is complete dust, and this team is going to be the worst team in the NFL and possibly one of the worst offenses in NFL history. Yet if Deshaun Watson comes in and Deshaun Watson just say plays 12 games, at that point, I love this value of Brandon Cooks, where we look like we have the solidified number one option for Deshaun Watson, and we can just kind of figure it out. I talk about all the time, fantasy football is about upside, especially when you're drafting your wide receiver 4. I think the worst thing that you can do is go through and try to identify a player that has a high floor and go through and get that guy. I mean, if you're drafting a player, just say, like, I don't even know someone that would have a high floor in this range, because Cole Beasley would be going way after this. But if you're drafting, Laviska Shenault is a great selection. I will tip my cap to that. But if you're drafting a guy like Tyler Boyd here, I mean, you're not shooting for upside in the slightest. You're going, okay, just give me the 10 points per game that we should be expecting. And that's something you can get off a waiver wire in a redraft league. Okay, Mike is saying, I like the team with the 101 pick. Okay, so the team with the 101 pick is CMC, Sanders, Harris, Kyler Murray, Mark Andrews, Juju, Odell. Yeah, I mean, that is a very solid team. I'll say the only complaint that I would have with that team is I would possibly rather have Noah Fant in the 7th than Mark Andrews in the 5th. But you don't know that Noah Fant is going to last until the 7th. And honestly, the difference between the wide receivers that were going in the 5th and 7th at the same time weren't necessarily that massive. So yeah, I think Victor has honestly killed this draft. Okay, so In says, am I crazy for expecting huge things from Rondale Moore in a PPR/return yardage league? Might reach on him. No, man. I mean, especially in a return yardage league, I think that you can get very excited about Rondale Moore. And another guy that honestly, a little bit more under the radar that I'd be trying to chase in that specific format, maybe you go and maybe you try to grab onto a Kadarius Toney at the same time. Y'all know Kadarius Toney is not a player that I am really too interested in at all. But given the fact that he does possess the return upside, I guess you could go and try to chase him. Now, Curtis Samuel, the other wide receiver that we were considering, now goes off the board at the 8-10. So really, the best picks in this range, in my opinion, are going to be the Brandon Cooks, the Laviska Shenault, the Curtis Samuel, and the Robbie Anderson. But you did have a massive wide receiver run here, so I am glad that we decided to go with Deontay Johnson over Noah Fant, because the wide receivers we'd be looking at on the way back, I mean, they are players that it's hard to see upside. It's hard to see really anything with these players, to be completely honest. You go from anyone that doesn't necessarily have the talent, but he has a clear depth chart for him to be a stud, or you go from someone that has a ton of talent, but doesn't necessarily have the depth chart where he can excel. So maybe we just go QB, maybe we go tight end, maybe we go running back. It is going to be up to really what gets us left here in the 906. Now, there is one player I have my eye on, but I think that honestly we can get him in the 10th, so we should be passing there. Okay, so now let's see if we have anything else. Alaka Salt, it says, would you rather have T. Higgins or Devontae Smith going forward? Honestly, I think we would rather have Devontae Smith. Given the fact that T. Higgins is always going to be playing alongside Jamar Chase, I think that if we are talking dynasty, we would rather have Devontae Smith. If we are talking just regular 2021 redraft, at that point, it's easily T. Higgins. Jacob says, first team is bad. Took Mark Andrews before Kyle Pitts. No, taking Mark Andrews before Kyle Pitts is not bad at all. I mean, if you understand what happens with rookie tight ends, I mean, I can't fault anybody for that selection. And this is coming from someone who can acknowledge the fact that Kyle Pitts is the best tight end prospect that has ever come out. So even with that acknowledgement, you can look at Mark Andrews, you can look at the efficiency that he has had in his NFL career so far, and you can go, hey, he's probably the better pick there, to be honest. But Victor snipes us on one of our guys. He snipes us on Mecole Hardman. Hardman is someone that I was looking for later on. Yes, I understand he's been so disappointing lately, and I've lost a lot of money playing DFS with Mecole Hardman. Yet, if you're looking at him, that wide receiver came out in 2019. He was extremely raw. He had that elite athletic profile, and we knew that he was not going to be NFL ready right away, yet you were betting on him for the long haul. Now he's going into year 3. Now Sammy Watkins is officially out of this offense, and you have an upgrade in offensive line, so maybe those wide receivers with a little bit of a higher average depth of target, running deeper downfield, have more time to get there. So Mecole Hardman, someone that I actually don't mind at all in the 9th round. I would have possibly considered him depending on how the draft went up until our 9th round pick. Okay, so Robert says first team could have had DK Metcalf and Allen Robinson. DK Metcalf and Allen Robinson instead of Kyler Murray and Mark Andrews. Is that what you're saying? Or instead of Najee Harris and... No, man, Victor did... I don't know what y'all are talking about. I like that start. I think y'all are just completely ahead of... you're out of the water right now. Okay, Mike is predicting that we're probably going to be going with Dallas Goedert. Now, you know that is a tight end that I like. It's mainly going to be dependent on what guys fall. Okay, JN, man, Mike Gesicki, I think I've already ripped into you for taking Mike Gesicki too early, so we're not going to dive into that. But let's kind of skim through right now and see if we have any players that we should be taking. Okay, there's a QB that I know we can get very late that I'm very excited about, so we are going to be passing on QB. RB is kind of the same thing. I mean, we already got our 4 guys, so we don't have to take anybody there if we don't love the value, and we don't love the value, so I think we pass. Now, wide receiver, scrolling through, yeah, there are no quality wide receiver options. I mean, if they didn't bring in Christian Kirk, if they didn't bring in Rondale Moore, we would have liked Christian Kirk, but obviously that's a different scenario. So yeah, I think you're right there. I think we do just go get our tight end. We go get Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert, a guy that I haven't necessarily loved in fantasy before, but given the fact that now Zach Ertz looks like he is complete dust, I think that it is almost, I don't want to say one of the safest picks in the draft, but it's a pick that, I mean, there is upside to it. Okay, sorry that I moved the screen earlier. I was trying to move that little box so y'all could see the entire board. Preston says, are you going to go late Tannehill? Not necessarily. I mean, if we are trying to stack some of our wide receivers, guys, you could look at Kirk Cousins. You could look at a guy like Ben Roethlisberger. You could look at Deshaun Watson. Of course, not all of those players are exciting, but it's just going to be depending on what we get left. Maybe we just go with a naked quarterback. Maybe we don't get a stack, even though that's not something I would enjoy. Y'all know that I love chasing the correlation in our starting lineups. Maybe it's something that we are forced to do, but Elijah Moore going off there at the 908. Now that is a rookie I can get behind at this value. I think if you're taking, just say, Jamar Chase in the 5th, at the beginning of the 5th, ahead of guys like Adam Thielen and ahead of guys like Brandon Ayuk, maybe you're a little bit behind the 8 ball there. But if you're taking Elijah Moore in this range where there aren't that many exciting options, I think you are completely fine. Jacob says, Flock, your team is nice, but aren't you worried about that Swift will struggle with the lack of offensive talent? Yeah, man, like that's what I talked about when we were in the 2nd round. I talked about the fact that Matthew Stafford leaving definitely gives us concern about the overall levels of efficiency that you would expect with DeAndre Swift. But nonetheless, I think that you can look at Swift and you can safely say that he's a running back that has an elite talent profile to go along with this. They do upgrade the offensive line, and there were really no other options that I was too excited about. I knew I wanted to go running back with the pick. So at that point, it comes down to, do we take Swift, Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Miles Sanders, or Najee Harris? And I think that given his receiving upside, we probably just go with DeAndre Swift. Okay, so now let's see. Chaboy coming out says Joe Mixon is a top 5 running back in a PPR format. Man, I'm completely fine with that call, to be honest. Okay, so now we are going to be... We're just kind of in a range where it's not that exciting. I mean, this is what's so much better about Dynasty Superflex is that you have all those quarterbacks getting pushed up, which makes later rounds in the draft fun. It makes later rounds in the draft have a lot more talent, yet that's not the case here. In a 1 quarterback redraft league, it's going to be hard to find some diamonds in the rough once you get past round 9. Now here, I will say what you should be doing is you should be just straight up hunting upside. You really should not be looking at any floor whatsoever, because once you get into the season, you're going to have to make waiver moves. You're going to have to probably look to cut some of these players. So if that's going to be the case, you want to try to get the guy that may pop week 1. Maybe he would be the most priority waiver ad. And we do have the roster balance where we can kind of go anywhere from here. We do have our top 4 running backs. We have 4 wide receivers. Our wide receiver room is a little bit lacking. I think that we have the elite floor and ceiling combination with Keenan Allen. But beyond that, Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, Brandon Cooks, you can make the argument that none of them have an extremely high floor for one reason or another. Now, Deshaun Watson going off in the 10th. Watson is a quarterback that we would have looked at if he made it just say to the 11th or the 12th, because in a 1 quarterback league, it's great to invest into Deshaun Watson extremely late, because hey, if the NFL shows what they've showed so many times before, that they don't really care about off the field stuff and they only want to make sure that they have the players on the field that are going to make them the most money possible, and Deshaun Watson doesn't miss time, then great, you just got a fantastic value. Yet on the other hand, if you have the NFL decide, hey, Deshaun Watson, you're going to be out this season, okay, who cares? Cut Deshaun Watson and have that open spot for your first waiver claim that season. But now we are up on the board, and if we're going to be looking around, I think that there is one player we can go for. If we are talking about guys having an elite ceiling, it's sad having to pass on a wide receiver here. Actually, there's one guy that, okay, no, Jarvis Landry would have been someone that we could have looked at, but Jarvis Landry no longer available. I think what we do is I think we just start hunting upside here. And if we're hunting upside, I think we take Tony Pollard, and I know he's our running back 5, but if anything would have happened to Ezekiel Elliott, say in the preseason, say in training camp, just say really any time, say he has an off the field concern like we've seen so many times before, Tony Pollard is one of those few players that has the potential to just skyrocket in fantasy value. So Pollard in the 10th is always going to be one of my favorite picks. And I know I said that one of the reasons we went with David Montgomery in the 3rd is because usually once we get to the 9th and 10th round, I can always find some wide receiver value that we're in love with. Well, maybe we're learning a lesson that no, we can't find that wide receiver value that we are head over heels with, because I mean, outside of Tony Pollard, there weren't that many players that I was going to be excited about drafting as our wide receiver 5. So I think we just take Tony Pollard, we take the upside, and maybe we learn this just so later on, if we do another one of these drafts and we're faced with the decision point that we were in the 3rd between David Montgomery and George Kittle, we can feel a little bit more free to go with George Kittle in the 3rd rather than David Montgomery this next time. Okay, so now let's go through and see if we have, Mark says, Gio gone, Mixon going to eat with receptions. Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. Like I said, if Joe Mixon ended up falling to the 207 and we were faced between Mixon and DeAndre Swift for a redraft format, I probably would have gone with Joe Mixon, because I think that he's going to be playing in a better offense. I think that he is probably going to be seeing more touches per game. So if you're looking at those two things, I think you go, okay, even if Cincinnati has a significantly worse offensive line, the overall offensive efficiency and offensive production for Cincinnati should be so much better. I think it will probably outweigh it, and I think that you're right that you should go with Joe Mixon over a guy like DeAndre Swift, and that's why I said that at the very beginning, that I couldn't fault Mondo for deciding to take Joe Mixon there at the 206. Okay, Jayan says he's going to hate my whole draft. I'm still pissed about Mike Gesicki. Would have gone Mims or Goddard. But, man, you took LaMichael Pirine here in the 10th. I mean, at this range, there aren't that many players you can get excited about. So there aren't. I mean, am I going to make fun of you for taking LaMichael Pirine over? I mean, what other running back would you have really been looking at? I mean, Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson is someone that I do like. Maybe we decide to go with Darrell Henderson sometime soon. The thing is, we just kind of need some wide receiver value at some point. Devin Duvernay would be a player that I would like until we saw just the Baltimore Ravens go and completely bury him on the depth chart. But don't be surprised to see with JN going Devin Duvernay right now. Yet instead, he goes Michael Gallup. Honestly, I like the Gallup selection. So here we are looking at two players. I don't want to say both of their names just because I don't want to get sniped on a later pick. Okay, so here I think we take Henry Ruggs. Like I said, what we are doing in this range is we are hunting upside. If Henry Ruggs doesn't show anything within the first 2 or 3 weeks, if he looks like rookie season Henry Ruggs, at that point, we just completely pass. We go, you know what? We're fine cutting him. We're fine just going through and picking up a different guy off the waiver wire. But, I mean, he does have that elite speed. He does have the team investment of being the first wide receiver drafted in the 2020 NFL draft. So I think we take Ruggs. I mean, he had flashes his rookie season at the same time. Mike Jones asking, do you like the Kelsey Mahomes round 2 and round 3 stack this year? Yeah, man, I think that's obviously one of the highest upside stacks that you can get in fantasy. Can't complain with that stack at all. Now, Kenneth Gainwell going here in the 11th round, that is another pick that I think is just kind of rookie fever at this point. I think if you were closer to redraft season, you would kind of take a step back and you would go with someone possibly like an Alexander Madison or Darrell Henderson, both running backs that we have seen have that 3-down potential whenever they get the opportunity to start. So I don't love Kenneth Gainwell in the 11th, to be completely honest. If you look at our Dynasty rookie rankings over on Patreon, I mean, you're not going to be finding Kenneth Gainwell near the range that he's getting drafted here. Okay. Now, let me throw this down real quick so y'all can get a decent view of the entire draft. And I want to remind everyone, guys, if y'all go down there, smash that like button. If we get over, let's just call it 125 likes, we will go through and we will make sure that we are live streaming another draft this weekend. So please go drop that like. It helps us out so much. Okay, so let's move our video back up here. We were able to see the draft board a little bit. We can throw this screen up in the top corner. So it looks like Garlic is mad at us for bringing up one of those handcuffed running backs, giving out his next few picks. Okay, Trevor Lawrence and Aaron Rodgers going in the 11th and the 12th round. This is why I decided to pass on QB early, just because you're looking at those guys having that elite level upside. It's just so late. Alexander Madison in the 12th. I really like that pick. I think that we could have considered going Alexander Madison in the 11th over Henry Ruggs if it wasn't for our roster construction. Now, at some point, we are going to have to go QB, and I have a very exciting quarterback to go with. So Logan asking us, are you DO? I have no idea what that means. Okay, so now we can throw this up, put this down. Okay, so Devontae Parker, Brian Edwards, Trey Lance. Trey Lance was the QB we were targeting. I think Trey Lance has a higher ceiling than any other quarterback out of this rookie class this year, given the situation he's stepping into. Now, if we go to the quarterback position, guys with that elite level ceiling are kind of thinning out. I know a lot of people are going to be screaming at us to take Ryan Tannehill, but given the additions this offseason that we've seen by Miami and given the fact that Tennessee has lost a significant amount of pieces, honestly, I think we probably prefer Tua. Now, let's look at how many teams after us have a QB. The thing is, JN is the only team after us who doesn't have a QB. So I think we decide to pass on QB and we decide to go get another running back. At this point, we have 15 seconds. So we got to do this fast, though. I think we go with our guy. We go get Rashad Penny. And I know so many people are going to hate that selection, but we are hunting upside. Rashad Penny has the profile of a 3-down running back. Rashad Penny, we know that it can happen. So we're going to take Penny. JN's going to take Tua. And I think at this point, since we are the only team that has yet to take a QB, we probably just wait until the last round to do so. So maybe we take another handcuffed running back. And obviously, this is a 2021 redraft format. So I'm completely fine going in with one quarterback, maybe one tight end, maybe just no quarterback, to be completely honest, given the fact that streaming in the waiver wire is such a viable option. Okay. Connor coming out with a donation. Thank you so much, my man. You're saying, what are your thoughts on Carson Wentz this year? New location with an old coach, great offensive line, good run game, worth taking with my final pick. The thing here, man, is if we are trying to evaluate the overall upside of what a quarterback's going to be in fantasy, you either have to have one of two things. A, you have to have adequate rushing upside. You have to be able to go, and we've done research on this that's coming out in our Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide that you can find on Patreon. But if you're going to be a top 10 quarterback in fantasy in today's age, you're going to have a historic touchdown efficiency mark that is really hard to keep up with. I mean, this is going to be your quarterbacks like your Aaron Rodgers from 2020 and like your Patrick Mahomes every season, because we know you can project that from Patrick Mahomes. But you're going to need an outlier when it comes to overall touchdown percentage, or you're going to need a baseline of rushing that you can get from all of these mobile quarterbacks coming into the NFL at this point. I mean, you can get that from Trey Lance. You can get that from Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. Those rushing quarterbacks are going to be so easy to project at the next level, where those pocket passing quarterbacks, you're going to have to be betting on not only the elite efficiency, but volume to go along with it. So I'm always hesitant to go and get that pocket passing quarterback when we don't know that they are far above league average. I mean, you saw Aaron Rodgers last to the 12th round here. So I'll say if like guys like Matthew Stafford, Ryan Tannehill, Tua are all on the board, then no, I don't want Carson Wentz if it's a one quarterback format, because I think you could probably get by streaming. But if it's a super flex league, then yeah, Carson Wentz is someone you can take a shot with. I know he's going to a much better situation, but if you're betting on Carson Wentz to be anything really, you're just betting on an outlier. And I think at this point, I would rather use one of my last draft picks on a guy like Alexander Mattison, someone that we know, yes, he doesn't project to be in your starting lineup, but if something happens, he can turn into a league winner. And I mean, the path for that to happen with Carson Wentz, honestly, is a lot more unclear. And another thing we can point out with Carson Wentz is that the team is actively incentivized to try to bench Carson Wentz, because if you see Wentz not necessarily performing up to expectations, I think we go Matthew Stafford here. But anyway, if you see Wentz not performing up to expectations like what they want, and this team clearly is no longer a playoff team, they're then faced with the decision, do we continue to start Carson Wentz, or do we start Jacob Eason, then keep our first round pick next year? And especially if that team is, just say, worse than expected, then I think that it's going to be an easy decision for them to keep their first round pick next year, decide to bench Carson Wentz. And I know this isn't a likely scenario, but you have to view everything through the range of outcomes. So that's a long way to answer. No, I don't love drafting Carson Wentz. I just think you're betting on an outlier. I think the floor and the ceiling combination is very low. Now, yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. Paris Campbell would have been our pick at 13 if we decided not to go with the quarterback. I really do like the Paris Campbell pick, just like we were talking about. I mean, if Carson Wentz comes in, and if Carson Wentz is what you would want him to be for a league-winning quarterback, instead of drafting Wentz, why don't you just draft Paris Campbell? Because Paris Campbell would have to get that production, and a wide receiver that gets that boom is going to be a lot more valuable than a quarterback with that same boom. Logan says, I have a feeling that Irv Smith Jr. is going to be a top 7 or 8 tight end. Man, I think that's a great feeling to have. I don't think that's bold at all. I mean, I love Irv Smith Jr. Billiken Baller says, in my auction league, I got Kyler, Dak, and T. Higgins for a little less than 40% of my budget. Thoughts? Man, I wish I could give you solid thoughts. I have not had a ton of experience with auction leagues since 2017. So like I said, over on the Dynasty channel, we have been going through and we have been starting to do those mock drafts now that Sleeper has added them on. But I'll say I don't want to go and give you solidified thoughts on that just because I'm not confident with my take. Like if I'm not going to be 100% confident with what I'm telling you, I would rather just honestly kind of keep my mouth shut. Nobody says, at what point do you feel comfortable taking Kelsey in a redraft? Could you give an example of the running backs you would like over him? I think here at the 203, it's okay to take him. I think we would probably prefer having the Joe Mixon and the DeAndre Swift over Travis Kelsey, but I would prefer Travis Kelsey over some of those wide receivers you love, like an A.J. Brown or Stephon Diggs. JN says, I think Bateman is planning on parting ways with Brown 21 or 22, and Wallace is the Boykin replacement. Man, here, Bateman and Marquise Brown profile to be two completely different wide receivers. I think that the hope, I don't even want to say what the hope is for Devin Duvernay, because I think that honestly, there's not much hope, to be completely honest, man. And I love Devin Duvernay, and I thought that he was someone that we could be excited about coming into the year, but given the fact that just this has been one of the worst off seasons imaginable for Devin Duvernay, I think you have to definitely lower him down your rankings. Okay. But anyway, we are about to be back up on the clock in the 14th round. Okay, so at this point, KJ Hamler going off the board, followed by Jared Cook. So here, if we were just going to be scrolling through, honestly, we have 5 wide receivers. So I think at this point, we just try to hunt some upside with a handcuff running back. Of course, we're not looking to handcuff our own running backs because we're looking to maximize upside rather than limit the overall upside. We could also take a Sony Michel, hoping things turn around. But Sony Michel is like the opposite of trying to hunt upside, like we were just talking about. So probably wouldn't be the best pick. I think at this point, might as well just take a tight end. Let's go get a player that I hated in fantasy drafts last offseason, but now I think he represents a value that his situation has gotten much better with Matthew Stafford coming in, as well as Gerald Everett leaving. Tyler Higbee, a tight end that I hated last year, but now I think that he is completely fine. Connor says, thanks. I sent a message on Insta, draft grade, please. Yes, sir. Man, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I will run over there. And I will say the easiest way to get your drafts graded or the easiest way to get your teams evaluated is going to be through Patreon. I spend so much of my day, every single day, going through and evaluating teams that people send to me on Patreon. But nonetheless, of course, you can always donate and send it through Instagram, and I will go there and try to find it. Now, JN coming away with Colin Johnson, and under the radar winner from the NFL draft, Colin Johnson. Love to see it, man. In the last round, can't blame it. Also took Malcolm Brown in the 13th, which somehow I missed. Salvin Ahmad going in the 1409. I do like that pick. And Malcolm Brown is something that got brought up in another live stream. I believe it was on the Dynasty channel that Malcolm Brown got brought up, and people were saying like, hey, Mason, we need to be giving Malcolm Brown some attention. Miami did decide to sign him. They did also decide not to draft any running back in the NFL draft. So maybe Malcolm Brown is going to be getting more touches this year than we initially thought. Okay, so MJ says T.Y. Hilton not getting picked when 2 other Indy wide receivers were is insane. I mean, what is the upside with T.Y. Hilton, to be completely honest? I understand that, yeah, T.Y. Hilton was once an elite asset, but he was one of those wide receivers that went off of efficiency. And when you went off of efficiency and it's speed related, I think that's going to be the first thing to fall off. Okay, let me prepare to show you all this entire draft board real quick. Let me hide my video. Okay, that way y'all can see this. If y'all want to take a screenshot, really do whatever with it. That way you can have this small data point. I will say for Dynasty startups, we actually have some ADP available over there on Patreon, and that is not behind the paywall. That is completely free. But yeah, I think that should be it. Make sure you take a screenshot of this, and let's see if we have any other things we should come through and talk about. Pretty much, I just want to say thank you all for coming out for the first mock draft that we've had on this channel for the 2021 season. Of course, if you're supporting the show on Patreon, I want to give a massive, massive thank you to you for allowing me to do this full time, for allowing this to pretty much consume my life, because this is 100% what I want to do. And oh yeah, the last thing that I need to say for everybody still here, we are moving to a new studio. I'm going to Florida, moving to a new studio. So if you want something in the background's going to look completely different. It's going to be further away, most likely, the overall setup. So we're going to have way more space to fill out. If you want to get something on the wall, if you have any ideas of what you would like to see on the wall, make sure you shoot me a DM either through Patreon, preferably through Patreon because I'm going to see all DMs there, or shoot me a DM through Twitter or Instagram or Discord. Hopefully I find it. And yeah, that's it. And thank you all for coming out. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell if you want to be in our